Alright, so today I've got a 2007 Toyota Camry, and my son was driving it, and the car just basically died while he was driving it. I'll tell you what it sounded like after trying to restart it and what it'll still sound like. So that's what it sounds like. It'll turn over, but it won't actually fire. So the first thing that I looked at were the fuses for the fuel, because it sounds like it's got enough power and everything else was fine running up to this point. So this car has fuses right under here, and I've looked at the electronic fuel injection fuses, and there's a few of them. They're all fine. I haven't replaced them with the alternate ones that they give you, just to double check to make sure. So those are all fine. There's also another fuse box in the cabin, right underneath the steering, or underneath the dashboard here. There's one or two of them up in here. I don't know if the camera can see it, but there's two EFI fuses in there, and those are fine. So the next thing I did was I took out the fuel line from the fuel rail, and so that's what this is here. In order to get this off, there's a little tool, and I'll go get that in a minute. But what I did was I took this off the fuel rail right here, and then put the car in the on position. I had a container to try to catch any fuel that would come out, and nothing came out. I then tried to start the car, and still nothing came out. So I was able to determine that no fuel was coming from the pump into the fuel line, into the fuel rail. So the next thing I figured was the problem was the fuel pump. And in order to get to that, in this car, it happens to be in the back, under the back seat, and you don't have to drop the tank. Now, I already took the back seat out, but what the back seat does is it just basically clips into this receiver here, and there's one over there. So if you just take a breaker bar or anything really, just get it underneath the seat, and then you pop up, and it'll just pop right out of here, and it'll pop right out of there. There's no, there's nothing else to squeeze or anything. It just basically just sits in there. Once you pop it up, it comes right up. So then I just move the back seat out of the way. Here's where the fuel pump is. So my next step will be to take off this lid, remove the fuel line, and then swap out with the actual fuel pump. Alright, this is the set of tools that I got from the parts store to remove the fuel line from the fuel rail. Only about $10. You can probably buy a cheaper or a nicer set somewhere else, but basically it's just this little plastic fitting, and it's going to fit right into the fuel line, and it's going to squeeze the teeth that are in here. It's hard to get the camera to focus in there, but there's little teeth that fit right over that fuel line that's at the bottom of the screen and snap into place over here. So if this were on here, what you're going to do is fit it with that keyway onto there. It's going to fit sort of like, I can't really do it with my camera in the way, but it's going to fit onto there, and it's going to squeeze into here, and you're going to push, and while you're doing that, it's going to push those teeth that are in the fuel line in, and you're going to push it, in my case, that way. And while you're moving it back and forth, probably best idea to go like that, and then it's going to pop off, because what you're going to do is try to get these little teeth to snap up and over this final ridge here, and that's what this plastic thing does. So you want to be careful not to snap this plastic, and you want to be careful not to snap the teeth, but basically it's going to fit into there, pushing up those teeth, and once you're doing that, you're going to just sort of work its way off, get it off of here, and as soon as the teeth get over here, it snaps right off. I mean, I can see here it's gonna go, you know, on pretty easily, and it just comes off. Once I get the new pump in there, I'm gonna make sure that when I turn the car on, that fuel is gonna come out, so I know that that was really the problem. So I'm gonna wait to reapply that when I'm done. But that's how you get the fuel line off the fuel rail. You don't want to pry it with anything else because you'll possibly break a snap, or I guess you could try getting the rubber hose off of here, but I think it's just easier to buy a little tool and work it off the fuel rail like that. So there's something else I should have said in the beginning. Also, when I put the key in the on position, I listened to hear if the fuel pump would turn on, and I did that even without the seat on there. So I listened, of course, outside, see if I could hear it. I didn't. I took the seat off, put the key in to see if I could hear anything coming from here, and I didn't. So that was another indication that there was a problem with the fuel pump. I should have said it in the beginning. But now that the seat is off, I just need to pry this off, and you can use a screwdriver, or I'm just going to use something a little bit bigger, and just want to be careful not to bend this door here. And it's on there with obviously this glue from the factory, so it comes up pretty quick though, pretty easily. And I'm just move this out of the way, and then right there's the connector. I'm going to put the phone down to do that because I only have one hand. Maybe I can go this way. Once you have the door out, all you have to do is squeeze in to this connector here with your thumb, and it'll just come right out of there. So no tool is necessary. Just squeeze it, it'll come right up, and just move the door out of the way, trying to get that glue on yourself. Okay, for the fuel line, there's this yellow clip that goes all the way in there, and so to get that off, all I did was very carefully pry back one of the little yellow ends here and on the other side, and then it slipped it through here, and then I squeezed it and brought it back out, so this yellow clip is completely out. You don't want to break that, of course, but it just slides in there, and just very carefully pry back one end. It'll loosen up real easily. The other end, it'll bring it to here, and then you squeeze it in to get past this other gateway, and then it just comes right out. Then your fuel line is right there. If you just lift up, it'll come out. A tiny bit of fuel will probably come up, so just be aware of that. Not too much, just a little bit. And then I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these bolts, and you can either use a Phillips screwdriver or an 8mm bolt, and I'll probably just use an 8mm bolt to remove that. So I'll do that next. Okay, so here's the fuel pump removed. It was not an easy thing. You just have to keep twisting it around until you are able to get it out, and this float is what determines the fuel gauge, but this is probably the arm that's making it more difficult to come out. So eventually you'll work it out. This is supposed to be hanging out loose. This is the filter, and obviously down in there is the tank. So I'm going to put this aside and put the new one in. I'm just going to get little bits of gas out of here. I also took off the negative cable on the battery just to be safe, and so there's no problems coming up. So next I'll put in the new pump. Alright, so here's the new one. Looks just like the other one. Here's that loose metal, which is supposed to be like that. So try to put it in an angle, and it goes in a lot faster than it came out. And make sure that's floating in the water, that metal thing, or in the fuel. And I put this is the old O-ring that was on there, so I put the new one on there just to be certain. And this is higher than the other one, so I guess it has to be compressed. Alright. Okay, so I just had to push down a little bit on the filter. I'm going to hold it down and put this metal plate back on and get a couple of bolts in there. So you have to push a little bit of pressure and put these in. Just get them started. Just finger tight to get a couple of them down. You'll have to keep pushing down on it because it'll want to pop up on you. Alright, so I got 2 of them in there. I'm just going to put the rest in there and then I'll hook it up in a minute. Alright, so now we're going to put the fuel line back on. It just fits on right over that thing. Put this little yellow lock clip in there. Should just squeeze past both of them. Yep, that one's in there. And we're gonna put the clip back in there, which goes like this. And this fits on there just a certain way, but the seats are gonna hide it all anyway, but just put that on there. Alright, so now I'll put the negative terminal back on the battery, and we'll put the key in the on position, and this should make some noise. So I will go do that. Also, don't forget to put the fuel line back under the fuel rail. Otherwise, if you don't, the fuel is just going to shoot out of there. So it should just snap right on there. Okay, the car, the key is in the on position. However, I don't hear any noise from the fuel pump, but the car starts right up. So, not sure why it doesn't make a very audible noise, but it sure doesn't. So, car's running. Just give it a little test drive. Everything's good. I'm going to put the seat back on, which you just put it back on there. Put the seat belts through the hole. It just pops down in there. I'll show that in a minute. But the car runs. Doesn't make hardly any noise, or none at all. So to get the back seat in, you just sort of put it in at an angle like this. I don't have it attached yet. Put the seat belt through the hole there, which is really just sort of a keyway. And then I'm gonna have to use both hands, but I'm just gonna push down and snap those things into place. So this is gonna fit right into there. There's one on this side, and then there's one on the other side. So that's really all there is to it. It'll just snap in there, and you're back in business. So hopefully this helps. Again, a little surprised that the pump didn't make a noise, but that was the problem. All right, thanks, and thanks for watching.